Steve Bunin in the King5 newsroom. We've got some breaking news from the Seattle Kraken. They have named the first head coach of their top minor league team, and it's a guy who won a Stanley Cup. That's the NHL championship as the head coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins in 2009, Dan Bylsma. He'll be the head coach at the Coachella Valley Firebirds in Palm Springs. They'll drop the puck in December. He was a head coach with the Penguins for 6 years, was the NHL Coach of the Year 1 year, won the Stanley Cup, as we mentioned, 2009. Later coached with Buffalo for 2 years, was the Team USA Olympic coach for Sochi in Russia in 2014, and worked this past year in the minor leagues in Charlotte with the Seattle Kraken. So he'll be the first head coach of the AHL team. That's the top minor league team for the Kraken. And, just kind of hashtag stand for truth. If you're Dave Haxtell, the head coach of the Kraken, I don't know how thrilled you are because the team was 28 games below 500. If things don't start well this upcoming season, you've now got a guy who's won a Stanley Cup waiting in the minor leagues. But pretty exciting for the Palm Springs team. Big announcement from the Kraken that just came out in the last minute. Steve Bunin live inside the King5 newsroom. The U.S. State Department has just confirmed that a second American citizen has died fighting in Ukraine against Russian forces. He actually died a couple weeks back, May 15th, while fighting in the southern tip of Ukraine. His name was Stephen Zabielski, 52 years old, survived by his wife and 5 stepchildren. Again, he died in May 15th, but the news is just being confirmed by the State Department today. Previously, a Marine Corps veteran named Willie Cancel was killed back in April. So those are the 2 American citizens killed so far in Ukraine since Vladimir Putin invaded. Now, also, we have 2 people from Alabama, volunteers that are fighting for Ukraine, that are being held there, reportedly being detained by Russian-backed separatists. The State Department says it's watching the situation with Alexander Druki and Andy Nyuk-Win. They were captured last week, volunteers from Alabama who went there fighting for Ukraine. So the State Department is watching that while confirming the death of a second American citizen in Ukraine. Mimi?
Thank you, Steve.
Steve Bunin live at the breaking news desk, and this is just in within the last few minutes. The Supreme Court of the United States releasing a case that has to do with Hanford here in Washington State. Now, this is not Roe versus Wade that nationally people are expecting, but it involves a King5 investigation. After 2 years where Susanna Frame and the investigators worked on this case in Hanford, Governor Inslee signed into law a new state law that essentially presumes that workers at Hanford will have occupational illnesses. They'll have higher odds of having dementia, lung cancer, organ damage, respiratory illnesses. Well, the Department of Justice, i.e. the U.S. federal government, filed a petition with the Supreme Court to knock this down, saying this goes against federal government laws. It sort of supersedes the federal government. And in a unanimous decision that just got released, Stephen Breyer, the outgoing sort of left-wing, if you will, justice, he issued the opinion, unanimous from the Supreme Court. All 9 justices say that this Washington state law does violate the so-called supremacy clause, the doctrine that you can't have a state law that supersedes federal law. So this is a huge deal. I would presume that if Susanna's not on vacation, she'll be on this today. We'll be covering it throughout the morning on Kong, on King5.com, on King5 News at noon and in the afternoon as well. So a big decision from the Supreme Court of the United States involving a Hanford, that nuclear site here in central Washington.
Yeah, all starting right here at King5. Steve, thanks so much.
Let's bring it back to the news desk here, where we're seeing a heat wave move across parts of the country today, specifically the upper Midwest. If you have relatives, friends who live in Chicago, they're going to be pushing 100 degrees today. We can give you a live look at the Windy City, which is not very windy today from EarthCam. Be pushing 98 today. Now it's going to drop to 81 tomorrow, but Minneapolis, it'll feel like 100 with the humidity there. St. Louis, it'll be 99 degrees plus humidity. Milwaukee, 97 today with a heat index. That means what it actually feels like when you're walking around, of 105. You'll see significantly, according to experts, increased potential for heat-related illness. There could be some possible storms throughout the Midwest that would bring some damaging winds, large hail, roads could start buckling. And then tomorrow, although it'll cool down in the Midwest, it will be pushing 100 potentially in New York City, Washington, D.C., Pittsburgh, Roanoke, Cincinnati, Cleveland. So those cities will have that another wave of heat. And also, for what it's worth, in Europe, they're expecting extreme heat. Spain specifically is on alert for an outbreak of intense wildfires. Steve Bunin back with you at the King 5 breaking news desk, and some big financial news today. Kellogg is splitting up into 3 companies. This is America's most popular cereal maker. They've got 30% of the market share, and Americans gobble up $20 billion in cereal each year. But they are splitting into 3 companies and moving their corporate headquarters from Battle Creek, Michigan, which if you ever stared at the cereal box as a kid, that's where it's made, to Chicago, 4 hours away. The last major food company in our country to split was Kraft, and that was 10 years ago. It split to create Mondelez. So Kellogg splitting. They're not saying what the company's names will be or who will be in charge of what, but their snacks make up 80% of their current sales. You got the snacks, the cereal, and who knows what else. Also, Twitter's board has just unanimously recommended that the shareholders approve Elon Musk's $44 billion bid for that company, as Musk announced some details of the Tesla layoffs. They're laying off 10% of their salaried staff over the next 3 months. So 3 big stories here from the world of finance.